Hey everybody, let's just jump into it here. So I'm starting off with a medium flesh color. I'm using that on the bottom part of the ear here. I can see this underneath the fur more than I can anywhere else. So I'm making sure to go ahead and put that in there. And I like to think of these drawings as like a landscape foreground. And I like to do the colors that I can see farthest away, I guess you could say, and then work my way forward to the hairs that are on top. That's your fine detail. And I wanted to make sure that I go ahead and get those colors in there first. So I'm now using a cool gray color, and I will put all of the colors that I'm using in the description below. And I'm just outlining all of the shapes that I see. I want to focus on shapes first before I focus on any details. Now I have a walnut brown, and I'm just going through and marking out those areas that I can see. And I do like to just focus on the shapes right now. I'm not trying to get any type of detail. I just want to make sure that I get those areas filled in, making sure that I leave my whites white, because it's really hard to pull out highlights with colored pencil. So I like to go ahead and fill in those darker areas and those lighter areas, but I am using very light pressure at the moment. We've talked about this before in previous videos, but paper texture, it's like little heels on the paper, the tooth of the paper. It's like little heels. You don't want to flatten out those heels. So you have to press really easily at the beginning of your drawing, because if you push too hard, you're going to damage the paper. You're going to push it down flat, and you're not going to be able to get all of those colors in there that you would have been able to do normally. So I'm taking a darker color now. I believe I was using a Dyck Brown right now, and I'm just starting to get in a little bit of those darker colors. I now have my indigo, and I'm going to start filling in that, because this part of the ear is extremely dark. It looks, black. And I want to go ahead and mark those out, because I know that those are just going to be extremely dark. It's okay to go ahead and start burnishing, pushing a little bit harder, because, there's not much to it. It's extremely dark in that area. Now I'm taking a warm gray. I believe this was a 5. And I'm going to start filling in just a little bit more. Now, if you look, you can see all of the white, because you can still see a lot of the tooth of the paper. I'm not pushing hard at all. And I'm just going to continue on, going back and forth between these colors. And just filling in any areas that I feel like have more of that cool gray color. Now I'm switching over to my Prismacolor. I'm not sure what color this is. It's so small now, I can't even see the name of it. But I will put the number of it down in the description so you'll know exactly which one that it is. Now I'm going back and I'm filling in, just pushing it a little bit harder, but not so much to damage the paper. And starting to get in those shadow areas. And there is a really beautiful transition between that dark area and the lightest part of the ear up there. So I want to make sure that I blend that out very nicely. And I have to admit, I had a hard time getting the exact colors for this dog's skin, or its fur. It's a mix between browns and blues and purples and grays. And there was a lot of trial and error, and I find that I don't use colored pencils that often. I haven't used colored pencils in a couple of years. And there is definitely a learning curve. There's an ugly stage that seems to go with any type of art, whether you're painting or you're doing colored pencil. So just don't give up, because just know that you are not alone. Everybody hits those ugly stages of their drawing. So just be patient with yourself. One of the great things that you can use is if you have access to a program to where you can use like a color picker, and that will help you to determine what colors you might be missing. Because sometimes our eyes kind of play tricks on us and we think that we see one thing when really there's so many other colors in there. Like I didn't see these violets that I ended up putting in toward the end of the drawing because my eyes just didn't see it. but they were in there. So make sure if you have access to something like that, that you use it, because it can be very helpful. And you want to make sure that you try to get your desired look, whether you're going for realism or, just depends on what you're going after. So that's just a suggestion that was offered to me on a MeWe group. So I thought that I would share that because that's something that a lot of people forget to use, including myself. So I'm going in now and I am using a little bit of a red violet. And I filled in there at the bottom part of the ear because I was starting to use that medium flesh tone. And I'm just building up those shadows with a mix of the red violet and the walnut. It just gives a lot richer tone, I feel like, to mix those two colors together. I really love mixing those two colors together. Now I use a wide variety of colors when I'm doing this. Like I said, there was so much in there, but I used, oh my goodness, I would guess at least 30 different colors just to do this ear until I felt like I was happy with the end result. So that's just something else to think about, is that, sometimes you need a lot of pencils. But anyway, so I'm going in, I'm just darkening up. I'm still, using light pressure, but I am going more toward the medium pressure in the areas like this where I know that it's going to be, the colors there are pretty set. I am using a little bit of black now because I like to have colors underneath the black. It helps to give a more richness and not such a flat color to that black. So always make sure that you have some colors. I like to do it underneath and on top, whether I'm doing color pencils or paintings. It really helps to give the depth. Now I'm going in with my Prismacolor Colorless blender. I didn't use this for the other parts of the dog yet, but I just felt like I was going to need a lot of layers to get the desired effect that I wanted. So I went ahead and used this, and as you can see, it blended it out really nicely. I let it dry. It took maybe 10 minutes. It didn't take very long at all. That's one thing that I love about this colorless blender. And now I'm going back in with those same colors. But one thing about when you do blend that out, you kind of lose not really the details, but I guess, the colors kind of blend in and fade a little bit. So you do have to go back in. But it's okay because it just adds more depth to your drawing. So I don't mind to do that. And I'm going in now with the grays. And I'm just filling in those areas. And it's just a process of going back and forth. I'm looking at my reference photo. I like to take pictures. I don't know if you do this, but this is definitely a helpful hint, is to take a picture. I use Pixlr. And I do a side-by-side of the reference photo to the whatever stage that I'm at in the drawing. And it lets me see, okay, well, I don't have this shape right, or the colors on this are off. And I noticed that I went way, way too dark. So I ended up having to lighten it up a little bit. And when I'm looking at it and I'm looking on my computer and I'm looking at the reference, the colors seem to be fine, but when I actually put it side by side, I'm like, oh wow, this is so dark. And got too dark whenever I did the second blend here, and this is where I put the comparison, and I was like, oh wow, this is way too dark. So I go in with let's see what color that was. This is a Beige Sienna, and I'm going over the entire piece pretty much, because I need to lighten it up. It was way, way too dark compared to the reference. And as you see, putting this color on top, it gives kind of that grayish, bluish tone that I was missing. So it's exactly what I needed. But that's just another little hint there for you guys, a little tip, I guess you could say, is to make sure that you step away from it, because sometimes you can sit there and you can look at it and you're like, oh, I think this is great, this is perfect, this is looking exactly the way I want it to, and then you do a side by side and it's like, this is completely wrong. And now I'm pulling out some of those highlights that I lost when I used that colorless blender. because you know when you use that and it just all kind of mixed together. So I just have a mono eraser and I take out those highlights because I don't want to lose those. I'm going in reestablishing those darks, and it's just, this is the process. You just have to go back and forth until you you get the look that you're happy with. I did try using, I don't have one of those I can't remember what they're called right now. I'm through the little razor tips that a lot of crafters use to try to pull out the hairs to get more detail. And I was like, oh, I want to try that. Well, I didn't have one. So I tried using the tip of a nail. It didn't work. So just to let you know, don't use the tip of a nail to try to pull out any hairs or any texture. It doesn't work. So now I'm focusing more on getting the details. I'm using a Walnut Brown here. I loved Walnut for this. I think it was perfect. And I'm going through, and I noticed, because this is short hair, that, you know, I wanted to get that look, but short hair, it's pretty smooth looking. So you don't want to, you got to keep those strokes short with your pencil. If you go too long with those strokes, it's going to look like longer hair, and you don't want that for this type of dog. So I'm just reestablishing. One thing that I've noticed to help you get a realistic look is to have your darks right up against your whites or your lights in your dog. It really helps to give a realistic look. So I'm going in now and I'm just reestablishing the whites in the fur. And remember to use that brush to dust off any of the excess pencil that may break off, because I am pushing pretty hard now. I'm trying to smooth it out. I'm pretty happy with the colors. So I am pushing quite a bit harder. I definitely have switched over to my Prismacolor white here for blending a lot of this. I love the Prismacolor for blending out color pencil. I know that there's a few other brands out there, but for me personally, I love the Prismacolor, so I use that almost always. Okay, so I got the lights in. I'm pretty happy with that, but then I realized that I'm missing some of my darks. So I'm going in with a, I believe that looks like black, just to reestablish those dark areas. It might be a dark brown. I would have to look. I'm trying to look here. I got all my pencils out in front of me. It could also be an indigo that I was using in that particular area. Okay, now I've noticed that I've lost some of that flesh color tone in there. This is where I'd actually asked the MIWI group, and I was like, hey, I need help. There's something missing here. And they gave great feedback. And you can see up in the top there, I have done the side-by-side that I was telling you guys about, just to get an idea of what's wrong. Something was off. I couldn't figure it out. And I realized, oh, I'm missing those flesh colors, those reds and pinks and peaches. They just wasn't in there anymore. So I got out some Venetian Red. I got out a cream color. I got out, what else did I use? I think a peach. What else? Let me look here. You know, the medium flesh again. I put those back in there because they were missing. Now I'm taking that white, pressing really hard now, trying to blend this out, get it nice and smooth. Going back in with some red violet now, just to establish those darks. I find that red violet in those shadows looks beautiful. And now it's just a matter of going back and forth with the details, making sure that those darks are dark enough, the lights are light enough. And then I will continue this on throughout the entire piece. It's just a matter of going back and forth. I like to work on one area at a time, especially because I want to make sure that I have all the colors that I need, and I don't want to start filling in the entire piece and then realize that my colors are off. So Start with one small area like this, like the ear. Work your way, and then you'll have all your colors. So I hope that you guys enjoy this piece, and I will see you guys in the next video.